everybody. Welcome to Constellation TV episodes number 52. I'm Holger Mueller and here with my fabulous co-host Liz Miller. Hey Liz, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Holger. I'm sitting here. I'm actually coming in live from India. So hi from halfway around the globe. It is an interesting time here. Great market. We're both on the road, which is, how
I'm live at the place where the great Albert Einstein, the lecture last. Where am I, Liz? University of Ivy League University. Starts with P.
Princeton.
That is for you making Princeton. Very good. I still have to see the Albert Einstein house.
Albert Einstein, yeah.
Very
it's a nice campus. It's a nice campus. Listen, I graduated from a 7 sister, and here's what I have to remind everybody of. Those boys' schools needed us to keep their GPAs up. That's all I have to say about that. But anyway, listen, it has been a very interesting time in the world, so let's get to some news.
We're not going to talk about ChatGPT because everybody talks about ChatGPT. So let's talk about ChatGPT.
Let's talk about ChatGPT. You know what? Let's not talk about ChatGPT. Let's talk about OpenAI.
Exactly. Because I have other things. Stable Diffusion, DALL-E 2. There's other stuff. I have so much more respect for the generative images than for the written text.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. I can understand the general public's fascination because, writing is so hard. I know that every day. Right, but we learn writing in school, essays, slow, exams, it's hard. And now people say, oh my God, it can write text, which makes sense. Right. But it was so hard for me, it took me years.
But isn't that funny that, we went through years of retraining our brain how to speak in search, right? So when you would go in and you'd open up the little search engine, you'd be like, I just wish I could find a restaurant that's around the corner that I haven't ever tried before. And I really like Indian food. Right? That's how you want to ask people things. That's why you want to ask for advice. But we had to retrain our brain to search the yellow pages, right? Then we had to retrain our brain on how to take that alphabetical search of either topic or location and then move that into a more advanced string, right? So we taught ourselves how to think in strings. Well, now there's something that actually lets us speak the way we normally speak and ask questions, how we want to ask questions, which is great. It gives us a new avenue to actually humanize conversations. Is it groundbreaking? Is it the most amazing thing we've ever seen?
But the thing which for me is the groundbreaking thing is the picture generation. I will never be a graphics designer.
Yeah.
But I will never be able to Photoshop this celebrity's head on this animal in this setting and make it look like a high-grade picture, right? I will never be able to. I'm fucking all for that.
Well, but I think that the thing that I am actually really welcoming from both the OpenAI, the generative AI, the ChatGPT, whatever the new thing is. I mean, 3 months ago it was Lensa, and you could go create an avatar of yourself and make yourself look like an astronaut, right? You're never going to be an artist, but now I have this amazing image that looks like I'm in space, and oh my gosh, it's so cool. The thing that what has to happen because of this is not a conversation of where or how can I apply AI, but where and how is it adding value to the processes that matter most to my business, right? Am I actually applying it so that my employees are actually able to find things that are so deep in the company archives, buried in years and years of text that they can't actually find to make use of it?
Write better emails than my sales reps.
Right.
The bar is not high. Nothing against sales reps, but writing is not high.
Right. The bar is not high. But I also think, can ChatGPT actually finally crack the code of why are my smart routing algorithms not working as well? It's because everyone asks a question differently, so it gets routed to the most common answer. Whereas you put something like ChatGPT in, all of a sudden you're routing in a very different way. Contact center can route their IVRs, their IVAs. It adds that mission quotient. You and I talk a lot about, listen, we've had smart routing for decades. Why doesn't it work? It's because people aren't that predictable. You need that extra layer of engine, that extra layer of AI to be able to bring that in. And I think tools like this are able to do it. But it has to start that question because, it's been funny watching people be like, I need to bring in ChatGPT into my organization. This is amazing. It's going to completely change customer service. And then you ask them the very simple question, well, you bought this tool in your CCAS system 6 months ago. It's been up and running. Why aren't you using that? What? It has conversational AI built into it, So what I hope from all of this madness is it starts different conversations, right? It starts the strategy conversation.
There's an interesting technology bites though, because I see there's more fascination on ChatGPT in the Apple camp than in the Google Android camp, where you've been talking to your device and getting half a reasonable answer since quite a while. So it's very interesting how the excitement levels differs on your smartphone or personal productivity ecosystem. It's very, very interesting how the levels of excitement change. Yeah.
If the personal assistant that's a sentient assistant in my home gets smarter, I'm going to take it, because she's not that bright right now. I'm not going to lie. But
we need smarter help.
We need smarter help. But, talking about smarter help, I think that leads to the other bit of news that seems to be dominating all the headlines, which is the constant news, or what feels like constant news, of the continued layoffs. I mean, 4 weeks ago when you and I sat in this a very similar screen setup for episode 50, we were talking about layoffs and announcements that were happening, and we still see them happening. Most recently, you see Twilio hitting their second round of layoffs.
Exactly.
You've got Salesforce hitting their second round. You're starting to see the artifice of incorrectly assuming that the acceleration and the sales cycle through the pandemic and through all of the rapid acceleration of buying and transformation was going to be sustainable, and that's what we were going to do. We went out and doubled our staff sizes in 3 years and somehow thought that was going to be sustainable. But it's not.
Yeah. So obviously, the special pandemic, money, subventions, euphoria, boom, like for the PC makers who have all hangovers, chip makers who have all hangovers, people seem to have forgotten that it goes in waves, right? What I found interesting is I just commented on the Cisco earnings, right? Yay, Cisco's growing again, but less profitable, right? But people aren't thinking that because they're so happy that they're growing again. But then I always like to listen to the CEO next day on CNBC. So listen to Chuck Robbins, and he's saying, yeah, we talked ourselves in the recession and so on. So the mentality and the approach of the CEO towards the recession determines the cost base of the company, right? And most likely, can be wrong, I don't vision for all the Cisco people out there. I expect layoffs for Cisco coming this year, 2023, right? So I think people overestimate. The first time in my life that I listened to, the economists would say it's a recession, and everyone said it's a recession, obviously, right? This is the first time we're having these different talks, different parts of the world with different world economy. We're more digitized than ever, so maybe the 7-year cycle rule is no longer valid. But I think there's going to be ups and downs, and the ups and downs have to be done well. And at the end of that, profits are the mother milk of great products. We're in the software industry. If you don't have profit, you can't build great product. You need people to build great product. Let's not forget that too.
Right.
Some of the companies have clearly overhired, right? I mean, a bunch of people, when I hear like who got laid off here, well, people we didn't even know what they were doing for 5-6 years, right? So organizational efficiency is really the challenge of the software makers right now.
But don't you see this as an opportunity, though, to also then refocus and recenter? I mean, I think you and I have had this conversation specific to what's happening at Salesforce. And while, I think there are two camps here, right? There's the, people are kneeling to the activists and, investors that are coming in, and you have these activists who are coming to the table. And I think that, we're seeing articles in the headlines or using words like caving, kneeling. I think you only do that when you're in battle with someone. I think a lot of times, there's the other side to that coin that you've brought up often, is that a lot of time these activist investors are forcing a focus that simply in good times and flush times you don't have to have.
No, but they're asking questions which nobody dared to ask, right? So I'm pretty sure the activist investors at Salesforce are going to say, Mark, do you have to spend so much on Dreamforce? I'm not sure how many people dare to ask that question in the 20 years of Salesforce.
Right. And I think it's hard question.
Yeah. So it also they accept reasonable answers, right? My personal experience working at a KKR-owned company and doing due diligence for PE companies, they're all very reasonable as long as you have a clear strategy which you're executing along. They're happy. They're happy. They want the return of investment, which everybody, the shareholders want anyway, it's public companies. But they couldn't ask that question because nobody on the board, because of the pension funds, the teacher funds, and so on, they're just happy to be there, right? They're not asking the tough questions, right? I've not heard that the Canadian teacher funds caused some trouble a few years ago, something out of Canada, right? Where more like activists like, I'm Canadian, right? Of them. But the large funds are not doing the job of supervising these companies, even so the whole large positions.
But I think it's interesting because I think we're seeing the same thing in the news that's recently come out with Avaya. So Avaya has recently just formally filed for Chapter 11, and they're reorganizing their ledger and reorganizing their debt. But they actually took a lot of pains to be quite visible about their plans for reorganization and reorganizing that debt structure, so that when they filed, it wasn't that big shock, right? Everyone was like, oh my God, they're insolvent, it's bankruptcy. It was more, we're just going to shuffle the ledger. And what's been very interesting about that is you often talk about the the R&D quotient, into that funding. And what we're seeing in a lot of the layoffs is a lot of those layoffs actually involve sales and that sales function, right? But what organizations, including like Avaya, are showing, they're still investing heavily into R&D because they're making every single one of their release cycles. They have, they're outlining what that technology roadmap is, and they're meeting every single one of those benchmarks and roadmarks. And I think that's what we need to start looking at. I think it's really easy to kind of bend to the headline. It's a little bit harder to kind of have that eye on what is happening on the product and what is happening on the customer adoption side. We're seeing customers transition to the cloud, and I think that's a big shift, especially with folks like Avaya. But that'll.
I look at it very. Absolutely, right? It's earnings season, so I do a lot of commenting on earnings, not sure why, but I really carefully look where a company is cutting, right? And the good news is they're not cutting on R&D, which is exactly the adult way to do it, right? Yesterday was Packard. Packard kept their sales and marketing spend flat, kept their general and administration flat, but they spend 10 or 15% more on R&D, which you have to, right? Because there's so many fundamental things changing. If I was a buyer and see someone's cutting R&D substantially, right, then I better have my contracts for sure what's going to be there and what maintenance I will get, and I better start planning for an off strategy, because things are moving so fast right now, like never before. And if you don't have the R&D spend, if you cut R&D too much, it's game over very quickly.
Awesome. Okay, everyone. Well, hey, stay with us for the next.
One interesting news from my technical side of it is Uber finally is shutting down their data centers, right? Which is interesting, and not going to the usual cloud guys, which is Amazon or Microsoft. No, they're going to Google and to Oracle, right? So, an interesting hedge. Yeah, it might have nothing to do with Lyft running on AWS, but fine, nothing to do with that. But obviously, they're running also some Oracle databases, because otherwise, why would you go to Oracle? So that's big wins for Google and Oracle. And it could become a showcase, given that Uber is a known brand for them, to change a little bit on the market share, because I think AWS and Azure need a little bit of competition.
Listen.
And last but not least, what is the Italian thing here?
Is it a flag?
It's the Scudetto, the little shield, which you only can wear if you wear.
Take your moment for AC Milan. Take your moment. We're 2 minutes over. Go ahead and take it.
I had to wait 20% of my life for them to become champion again. It's the 19th championship. Only the champion is allowed to wear the Scudetto. So Forza Milan, thanks for indulging me. Have to go. Thanks for listening.
He drove all the way. He went all the way to Milan just to get that, everyone. He has to do some Christmas shopping.
You can buy it online. There's e-commerce.
Well, you got to go. You got to do. Listen, it has been great catching up on the news, but more importantly, we still got more show for everyone to watch. We're going to have some updates on things like ShortList. We're going to have some updates on a new big idea Holger's actually percolating. So you're going to get a little preview into that. And you're also going to take a little bit of a flashback, walk down memory lane to see some really great insights and thought leadership that came from Constellation's big event of the year, CCE. So stick with us.
Hello everybody, it's Holger Mueller here. I'm talking to you on the road. Hopefully the audio is good enough about one of the most exciting things that's happening right now in cloud infrastructure, which is that cloud infrastructures are catching up to how the real world operates. And what do I mean with this, right? The real world operates in an asynchronous way, right? So things happen independently, away from each other. It does not happen in a synchronous way where everything is connected together. Unfortunately, the beginning of computing has been that everything had to be tightly close together. It was always synchronous. It was consistent in the sense that the user had to wait until a record was being saved and so on. So that does not really work how the world works together. In an event-based system, something happens and something has to wait and something will happen. We kind of knew that already if you think of something which is older than most of us here, including myself, which is the document-based architectures in EDI, which was there. So I'm talking about something very similar like electronic document interchange, which is the event-driven architecture or EDA. And the eye-opener for me was to see that the cloud vendors are ready for this, was that Werner Vogels, the CTO of AWS at reInvent in December, a few months back, dedicated the whole keynote to that thing, how event-driven architectures, asynchronous architectures are so much better at modeling the real world than anything else that we had before. And of course, AWS had a product with that, a no-code, low-code part, which is great because we don't have enough developers. So it's good to see a low-code, no-code offering taking advantage of that. But the event-driven nature, the asynchronous nature is perfect for the cloud as an infrastructure because it ramps up and ramps down. We all talked about the elasticity, the architectural elasticity, not so often about the commercial elasticity, which is equally important. You pay less when you use less, which is harder to achieve. But this is a significant construct for enterprises to modernize their applications, right? And the long-term theme on application modernization has been to chip at the monolith, right? With the monolith, people meant that everything was tightly put together, often the ERP system, and was very hard to do things. And they tried to innovate things on that, starting with APIs, service-oriented architecture. The more latest thing has been microservices, and to prevent any misunderstandings, right? Event-driven architecture does not replace any of these aforementioned terms. It just helps to reduce the synchronous monolith in a better way, right? So don't think event-driven architecture replaces microservices or SOA or SOAP or REST APIs, whatever that will be. They all play an important role because at the end of the day, what matters the most is working code for an enterprise is super, super valuable, right? It has been written and has been tested, has been accepted by the business, operates. That was really true north for enterprises. It doesn't matter really where the code is. I often joke, right? It could be using Roman technology being marble plates. Hey, they work great in the sun. They work great without batteries. They work great with fault resistance. They're not so good at dropping them. And then carrier pigeon with messages. And actually, carrier pigeons are asynchronous, right? Which leads me to the point that messaging is, of course, the key capability in event-driven architecture because that allows you to send messages between the different event handlers which take care of the event and allows you to queue those messages, right? The big departure is that you go from strong consistency, where you definitely knew what would be happening, to eventual consistency. Not that bad of a concept, kind of like alien to typical enterprise software transactional database application builders. But if you look at the largest e-commerce company out there, Amazon, operates on eventual consistency, meaning when you place your order on Amazon, you get the confirmation, you know when we'll be getting there. Amazon doesn't know it will really come at that point. That's a promise, right? That's most likely going to happen. And more often than not recently, hey, not criticizing Amazon, they do amazing stuff, but hey, the ETA has not been right for my stuff to come in time, right? It's mostly right, but it's not always right, and I must have been a bad streak right now. So that's the downside of event-driven architecture. What should CXOs do? Right? They should prepare their teams. They should look at what they want to chip out of the monolith, which parts of the automation will be suitable to rebuild in a modern way. They should look at new offerings to build these applications in the modern way. They should look at messaging-based architectures. There's a number of products out there to achieve that. And they should start doing this because it's a better way to scale and make your applications last longer. One of the other key benefits is that it's easier to extend these applications, right? It's not like you have a transaction which you have to drill open, retest, change the code, make sure that it works. No, you can insert the events and send the event, copy it potentially, copy the payload of the event to a different address, have different processes, do different steps in between. So it's much, much more future-proof than what we've seen in the past in software architectures. And hey, no surprise, the Big Idea Report will be coming out soon. Stay tuned for more. If you have any questions, please provide feedback. Love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.
Hey everyone, it's Liz Miller here to talk to you about one of our favorite times of year. That's right, it's shortlist season. They get released twice a year, and this time we are talking about everything from citizen developer low-code tools and platforms from my colleagues Holger and Dion to the brand new list of data integration for cloud-based analytical data platforms from Doug Henshin. But listen, oftentimes I come to you and talk to you about CX tools. A lot of CX tools, but oftentimes I'm really focusing on those marketing and service tools. So this time I thought I'd talk to you about one of our sales and revenue management tools, specifically what we're talking about in sales performance management. This is one of those tools that you're really starting to hear called things like revenue intelligence or revenue optimization tools. These are the sales performance management systems that are really focusing on both the progress and the process, the actual work that goes into a successful selling organization. So these tools typically consolidate internal and external data sources, and it can be a really integrated view of very complex sales cycles and sales ecosystems in organizations. What we're increasingly seeing is AI being applied to really not just capture and process data, but it's also being used to cleanse data. And it's also being used to elevate those next best actions and recommendations for highly actionable, specific coaching and training opportunities, prioritizing opportunities, and really recommending next best actions and automating processes and workflows to really optimize that work of sales. So we're starting to see these solutions automate everything from, let's say, digital assistants that can present account insights and input new actions and updates. But we're also seeing this dramatic improvement to the capacity to have really accurate sales forecasting. Because again, this is much about leading the performance of a selling organization to being a truly fantastic seller. So, who is on the list this year? Well, we've got 9 great vendors and we reviewed about over 20. So we're talking about the threshold criteria really being the ability to consolidate all of that account and customer insight from across internal data sources, the incorporation of external data, really from those sources that give market context, especially for sellers, the ability to leverage AI and process that data and automate activity capture across all channels. We're also looking for mobile accessibility. You got to be able to perform where sellers want to be. We're looking at recommended actions and talking about the context of accounts, not just the content of what an account is looking at. So we're also looking for tools that encourage cross-functional collaboration. Selling really can't happen in these narrow little kind of bubbles anymore. And we know that. So we need those tools that can bring in data from across that ecosystem, but can also start to share so that selling can really happen anywhere. So who's on our list? We've got organizations like Gong and IntroHive, 2 great examples of that revenue intelligence, revenue optimization platform. But we're also talking about Oracle Fusion Sales and Monday Sales CRM, SalesDirector.ai, Salesforce Revenue Cloud, also on the list, SAP Sales Cloud, TAC.ai, and Exactly. These are just 9 of the many tools that we review in this category, but these are the 9 that we believe should top that list as you're starting to look at the work and the fundamental success of sales performance management.
Right. We're going to talk about infinite computing. It needs a little bit of introduction. I always talk about we're in the era of infinite computing in general, which means we are not in the finite computing anymore. Right? So now we're in the state where the cloud provides infinite compute. And the interesting trend that we're seeing right now is that companies are purchasing more and more of that infinite computing from both the public cloud and the hybrid cloud, and on-premise. You companies have both some interesting offerings to things on-premise. But the other interesting thing is we see this diversity of compute all of a sudden.
For me, it goes back to some of those basic technologies, right? And for so long, Intel was sometimes as much as 36 months ahead of the competition. Mm-hmm. When you had that leveling of the playing field, when there was actually more diversity, more competition in that basic underpinning technology, that admitted more ingenuity, more players, more diversity. Now, as we head out and we look, and we might just be about 2 years left in the second era of Moore's Law scaling, and whether or not we'll get to 3D transistors for logic as we have for memory, that's an if, not a when. And so now understanding how will we now pull in this heterogeneous computing world where it's no longer just, am I going to have this x86 core or that x86 core? It's understanding even more beyond CMOS, right? How am I going to harness neuromorphic, quantum, analog, and this diversity of purpose-built precision semiconductors? How am I going to harness all of that? And also, that when we, just about the year where maybe 1 byte in 4 that the enterprise cares about will be in a data center, then how do I admit all of those bytes? How do I admit all of that information, reason over it at a time that matters, get into an insight, and then turn insight into action? Edge, cloud, core, exascale.
One of the big benefits of cloud computing is you're purchasing everything as a service. You don't really care what it's running on. Yep. The enterprise historically doesn't move very quickly, and when they kind of wed themselves to a platform, could have been historically very hard for them to move. They've gone and they've purpose-built these applications, or they've bought these application licenses, and they don't necessarily move around very quickly. Now we're talking about buying something as a service, and under the covers, is it running Intel, AMD, or is it running some other platform? Who cares? It doesn't matter. Yeah, and not everybody is running a kind of a SaaS service, right? So we have customers who are running in the cloud, they care what the platform is.
Yep.
And they have software written for that particular platform, or more likely they're just unwilling to change because this is their corporate architecture and they've been using it for 20 years and they're really slow to change. That's often the reason.
We have to figure out what is it going to take for us to be able to pull together this precision ensemble of devices, whether that is inside of an individual package that's going underneath the hood of an autonomous vehicle, or it is at that exascale data center. We need to understand how we economically admit heterogeneous compute into the enterprise.
But you're right, all workloads are not the same. You're not going to do Bitcoin mining on a Intel platform, right? And so some workloads run better. Some customers also have different requirements. Some are going to be more conscious about cost. Some are going to be more conscious about performance. So it really depends on what their needs are. And I suspect, we don't have it yet, so I don't know, but I suspect that not everything is going to be the same, right? The pricing is going to be different, and that's going to somewhat drive customer behavior on what's important to them.
When we can actually liberate, and you can innovate with the agility of a consumption model, and then that frees me to introduce new technologies and new ways of tackling a problem. Actually, I can innovate faster too, and I think that's also what you're seeing. Yeah, we'll circle on AI and machine learning, but then there's the other one, which is massive data analytics, and for us, the last piece is simulation and modeling at the exascale. So in the middle of that intersectionality, today that's where we see science, and I think tomorrow that's where you'll see science and arts and industry and enterprise. All of them wanted to occupy that really intelligent space where massive data analytics, machine learning, AI, and simulation modeling all come together.
But cloud enables you to have more of these things. It's funny because we always say cloud is all about standardization. At least we like to tell people it's about standardization. That means no, we don't have that feature that we want. We want you to standardize on something else. But I think what people are doing is, or the opportunity that it gives you the opportunity to create all these different platforms, let's say, and you can make them available to this huge audience. You don't have to try and sell them discreetly to everybody. And so I think cloud makes it easier to offer more choice. Quantum computing's out there. It's something that's coming along. It's also something that everybody is worried about, making sure that they're able to operate, because it actually changes the rules, right? There's right now rules that say your data is safe because it would take, 10,000 years to brute force decrypt it, and now you can't do that anymore. But it will come along, and it will probably pop up as a parallel thing, and it might have special applications at first. Database, something general purpose like database might be a ways away from there, but who knows?
Or ever,
yeah. I mean, we'll see how it rolls out, but I think it'll probably start out with little niche applications.
It's the question of precision, right?
Yeah.
When it offers advantage and the advantage offsets the switching costs, people will naturally adopt it, right? And I think for me, we'll say, people are enamored with quantum. There's huge quantum FOMO because people see it as this really new, wow, I've participated on the consumption side of the IT economy for the last 40 years. I'd love to be on the supply side. That'd be a nice place to be.
Yeah.
So that's very attractive. But there's sort of that question is like when, and there's just no good way to answer that right now. And that's part of my day job is to understand how do we integrate not just quantum, neuromorphic, analog, memory-driven, all of this increasing diversity. And we just had a review of AI hardware. That slide had like 6 point font on it because there are literally 100 companies out there experimenting with AI-specific hardware. Now the problem is, back to your notion of standards, what we can't have is have all 100 of those companies have a different way to do just about everything, right? Because that fails on the productivity integration side. Even if we solve the physical integration, well, this one needs liquid helium, this one needs ultra cold, and all. So we'll solve the physical problem, we'll solve the cyber-physical system. How do we pump that much data in and out of these things? And then we have to solve the productivity. And I think that's probably part of what we're working on.
Yeah, we have to be able to deliver them in a cost-effective manner, too. I mean, if you come up with something that requires that people can hand build it for you to run it, even if it's in a cloud environment. Cloud environments don't work by people running down the hallway with screwdrivers and soldering irons, right? It's all about standardization. It's all about being able to deploy at scale. And so there will be standardization of some sort.
Well, Holger, that wraps it up. Episode 52 is officially in the can. What do you think, my friend?
Oh, it's always great to be here. Great insights. Much
Always,
appreciated.
always great to be here. Listen, in 2 weeks, you're going to catch our far more prepared and far more serious colleagues, Doug Henshin and Diane Hinchcliffe, as they come back with episode 53. We like to just figure that, sometimes you got to take the school bus, sometimes you got to take the clown car. So from the clown car, signing off, Liz Miller, Holger Mueller. You can follow us on Twitter at CRTV_TV. Check out what's happening with our episodes, dropping live every other Wednesday. For us, we're out of here. We'll see you next time.
I haven't seen that soccer jersey yet. That's a new one.
And that is the number 1 shirt, okay? That's the regular shirt. Come on. With the Scudetto, okay? What is the Scudetto about, Hannah?
Can you repeat the question?
With the Scudetto, which is this thing here, the Italian flag in the form of a shield. The little shield is called the Scudetto. What is this about, the Scudetto?
What's it about?
Yeah. You get to wear the Scudetto when you're the champion for the whole season. So this makes the shirt extra special.
Can you blur? You can actually blur your background.
Oh,
how to do that?
New feature? No.
No, it's not a new feature. You just didn't know it was there.
No. When they came out, it wasn't around. But that was before you were born.
Okay.
Oh, there she is. We're getting worried. You might be sleeping.
I have no idea what news is coming. Here's ChatGPT with Holger's inability to remember people's names. Come on, damn it.
This is why I have them on my iPad.
I'm gonna ask ChatGPT in real time. How can we get Holger to remember names better and just see what happens? We're just gonna see what ChatGPT comes up. Okay.
Please send the answer.
Oh, sorry. ChatGPT is coming up with some great options for Holger right now because I asked it, how can Holger improve his memory with names? Improving memory with names can be a challenging task, but here are some tips that Holger can try. Pay attention.
No. I need a bona fide screenshot. This is incredibly too late.
It says, pay attention. When Holger meets someone new, he should pay close attention to their name.
So helpful.
Wait. Repeat the name. Holger should try to repeat the person's name a few times. Visualize the name. Holger can try to visualize the name in his mind. Let's just imagine the name written on a name tag. Holger can use a mnemonic, such as an acronym or a rhyme, to help him remember the name. Remember, if the person's name is Bob, he can remember Bob the Builder or Big Bob. Now Holger's never going to be able to stop thinking about people named Bob as Big Bob.
I'm actually going to do a poll if I should make my segment about event-driven architecture or diet changes. At some point.
No, Arizona decided that it doesn't believe in daylight savings because much like a belief in a higher power or God, you can apparently or believe or not believe in daylight savings. It's not an ethical, social, religious construct. You can't believe in it. You just have it or you don't. Damn it, Arizona.
For half an hour in San Diego, I would do a lot. For half an hour of daylight shifted backwards.
What Holger's going to do in San Diego in a few minutes, because it's going to involve walking to Starbucks and getting a green tea. That's what it's going to involve. That's what's in
daylight, not in the dark.
Right. That's what's included in Holger's 30 extra minutes. A larger green tea. Wait. Say that again.
Joyzy.
Joyzy?
Oh my God. That's the greatest thing I've ever heard. Holger Mueller saying Joyzy.